I find that when I'm presented a new idea, I often like to make it fit with, at least be resonant with, coherent to what I'm already thinking, fit my own frameworks of thought. Now, I don't want this to be a stuffing or a distortion of the other idea. I don't want it to be not seeing the other idea. I want it to be more like a conversation between the ideas to see how one reveals something about the other. So I'm going to try some of those here. I've been working with models for a long time, or at least I used to. Very long time ago, I would make these uh, stock flow diagrams, stock flow models with parameters and driving variables and all kinds of things like that. And I became very aware that these were grounded in the mental model. It's inherently itself grounded in action and perception with our world. And we may put in management as a greater sense of that action, what we're going to do. Then we build a simulation model, which is based on the mental model. The simulation model is more of a model of what we think than it is a model of the system. And in a way that helps our mental model grow. And then we get experiments and data to validate the simulation model or enlarge it. And this also changes our mental model. But it became quite clear very early in my career that all models, including mental models, are at best partial representations of the world, or more accurately, partial representations of how we understand the world, our mental models. Thus, all models, including mental models, are not truth, but they can be useful. And that's the case here, too. And I like the way that Mark brought up the idea that models can be like friendly things, teddy bears that you can bring up and look at and hold in various situations. Or they can be contemplative, like rosaries that you can use to think about things. Or they can be a touchstone that refers you to your deeper understanding, more understanding than that which is actually explicitly in the model. We have some cultural rosaries, things that we like to consider. And one of these, I think, is sustainability. And the three beads, but here more like pillars, would be environment, economy, and society that we keep handling and thinking about. And somehow, sustainability itself doesn't seem to quite depend, doesn't stay just there. So I thought maybe if we looked at it differently, maybe we'd see something that was missing. If we drew quadrants with the biosphere and homosphere, or anthroposphere as some say, as on one axis of distinctions, and the other axis looking at being and doing, or doing and being, we could start mapping some of these things. In the biosphere, the doing is environmental management. Being in the homosphere is social well-being, so the good in a sense in our other model. Or in the economy is what we do in the homosphere, how we organize our households. And there's that one quadrant now that's missing. What is our being in the biosphere? And that's where I was thinking spirituality could come in. But one thing that was clear in developing this is they're overlapping. They're just more foci or more tendencies to be in one area. They all go into all areas to some extent or another. And if I look at that and try and map it to this four domains that we were looking at earlier for a culture, economy, truth, beauty, and good, they do sort of fit, but I don't get any extra value from it. Even when I map it to the axis of doing and being, yeah, economy has to do with more doing. Truth, well, that have to be doing with checking out our truth. Being fits well with good and beauty. And on the other axis, yes, the economy and good have more to do with the homosphere, and truth and beauty may be something larger. I used to said eco here, but anyway, beyond humans. Yeah, it fits, but it doesn't give me a lot of extra value. And I go to my touchstone. What could I do with that touchstone to look further? I've shown this to lots of you before, talking about living happens in a continuous structural coupling. This is much run as acting and sensing, structural coupling, changes in the medium. What I've done is closed the circle, and instead of cognition, I've called it cohering. because we create a sense of coherence in that. And then I can enlarge this and look at it in a little bit more detail, that we do our cohering not only in language and rational thinking, but also in something that we don't have quite as obvious a connection to, or we're not able to express it in language as well, systemic thinking, our deeper history of beings. And these two are in themselves internally in structural coupling, as is the systemic thinking with the rest of our whole being, our biology. If I do it like this, I can start thinking, where would I put these other dimensions that we looked at? Acting and sensing. What do we do? Sort of a kind of a, uh, how do I know what will be the result of what I do? It has to do with economy. It's do, act, see that it work. So yes, that seems to fit more or less. And good. Did what I do influence others in a manner that's good for them? That is an ethics. Yes, that seems to kind of fit. Well then, science, truth. Does it create coherence? This acting and sensing, does it create a sense of being coherent with each other all the way around? Do I have to make a connection there? Yes, that more or less works. But then this is where it comes really nicely for me. Beauty I have to put into this systemic thinking, to this whole thing of coherence. So maybe our experience of beauty is this larger, brighter, wider thing. It's not limited just systemic thinking. It can be in any acting, anything we sense that seems to be broadly and locally coherent. So that worked in a way. But then I looked at another way. We have thought of systemic cognition as being giving you a broad thing, and thinking based on oral language enables more dimensionality in another way, and these two are in recursion. So oral language has given us something, then written language or symbolic language, thinking based in a symbolic language, has given an abstract way of thinking, even in a different dimension that's narrower. I've presented this in other contexts before, but I'm looking at it again here in a slightly different way. The systemic cognition is the sensual and consensual coordination, and oral language is coordination, distinguishing, and naming, and further recursions like that. So this is where we've got those ideas of truth, beauty, good, and economy. And then we get into symbols as realms of logical coherence. Where would I fit this? Well, let's first of all consider the axes. The axis here is the richness of the systemic coherence, and this axis has to be something about bounding of the potential response, so that there's a precision of some sort, or certainty maybe. So we're comparing ambiguity and certainty, or maybe better put, capacity for coordinations among multiple domains, and capacity for reliability and management and clarity within a particular domain. So maybe I could put beauty as kind of a spread out wide, and good going a little bit narrower, and truth yet. I'm not content with that kind of view, but it does give me an idea. I could draw these things, these abstract symbols, oral language, and systemic cognition, not as bars, but as distributions, and that somehow feels better in itself. So, okay, I didn't get much directly from comparing these two models, but wait, systemic cognition can lead to oral thinking, leads to abstract, and so you get this aha in the abstract dimension. Then what happens? Can you start thinking about it just in the abstract and kind of forget the rest and start playing with your one's abstract games? Have we become disassociated? Not necessarily, because you can broaden it out. And you might even do some poetry and bring it even wider out. So you can come down from the abstract thinking and find the systemic cognition and coherence. And I think this happens, in my perception, something to do with beauty and art. Art evokes us, but poetry evokes us. It doesn't have to be visual. It's this ability to be evocative, to broaden out again. Hmm, that was a useful comparison, but then think maybe what we need to be doing is having our attention moving amongst all these different dimensions. Maybe that's where the value comes in. Hmm. So, beauty, good, truth, and economy, maybe it's the interactions that matter. That they are not such things themselves. It's the arrows and what arrows we spend time with. And if you've looked at Mark's presentation, he's got this idea of which situations one set of arrows becomes dominant. But if all was well, perhaps we should have our attention meandering amongst all of these in all their different dimensions and perceptions and let ourselves move amongst the domains that are brought up. And maybe it matters more where we keep going back to and where we kind of base ourselves in. And so that's an interesting thought for me. So, coming from there back to the question that I began with, are beauty, good, truth, and economy necessary and sufficient for any social system? It's the sufficient I've been considering. Are they sufficient? And it seems to me maybe they're not. What is the missing? Is the process that enables the flow of our attention and engagement among these domains and the entailed understandings and actions. How do we keep this flow going? Well, in our normal life we flow. We flow, and what we've called flow is emotion. Emotioning is a flow in relational behaviors, and we do it as easily and intuitively. And I come back to one of Maturama's strong statements that has been such a guide for me. Love is that domain of relational behaviors in which and the other here doesn't have to be another person or even another being as in this picture, but the whole situation, whatever you perceive, arises as a legitimate other in coexistence with me, with oneself. And in that sense, love expands our awareness and vision. And if love expands our awareness, what experiences are there that evoke that expansion? And I think right away that there is a whole cascade of them of awe, delight, beauty, and play. So beauty was one of the ones here. So if beauty becomes the main ones, then we're back to this perception of these other truths. If we keep coming back to beauty, then conversations become conversations of exploration and play and delight. And we do enjoy these conversations and constantly grow in them. So I've been making this presentation and I'm looking at my own presentation. I'm wondering, what's the point of it all? What have I just been doing? Then I do a meta-reflection of myself reflecting. And what I think I've come to conclude is that conversations aren't for a purpose, but in conversations, we learn to flow amongst relevant domains, and this particularly when there are easy flowing, playful conversations in acceptance of the legitimacy of the other. And so I hope this will lead to further conversations. And I thank you for your attention. And I imagine this flow will continue and continue and continue. And good dancing to you with these ideas. And of course, I do welcome further conversation. And I will need to show some credits for some of the photos included.